I'm going to show you how I use the clone stamp tool. However, before I do that, I'm going to show you how I don't use the clone stamp tool. I'm going to first show you that when you click on the icon here in the tool palette, it'll bring up clone stamp tool and pattern stamp tool. The pattern stamp tool I never ever use. And I'll show you how that works. When you click on the palette up top here, you can select a pattern and you then paint using the pattern. If you click there and go off to the side, you can then select a different group of patterns which you have then to choose from. I really have difficulty seeing where this would be good. However, it is possible that if you do something like this and then go up under Filter, Distort, maybe Ocean Ripple or something, it does put enough of a distortion on that pattern to stop it from being an exact pattern. And then maybe there's a reflection in the water. So something like that is possible, but for true retouching, it's not something I'm going to be using. Okay, so I will go back to where I was, and then I'm going to go to the clone stamp tool again, and then again I'm going to show you how I don't use it. I do not use this clone source. It does have some functionality, but it's not something that I can really justify, except perhaps maybe one function in it. Along the top, it has 5 of these icons, and these 5 icons are used to set different points. So if I click there and hold down the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac, I'll click there. I can then make an exact duplicate of where the cursor on one side, currently on the left, makes a copy on the right. Okay, if I click the second one and I click a secondary point, it then does the exact same thing on the new point. However, if I go back to the first point, it then picks up where the first one was. And then I click the second one and it picks up where the second one was. Essentially, it jumps back and forth, so you can create up to 5 different set points. When I'm working on one at a time. I see no reason to actually need to use that. Another functionality in here is the flip horizontal, where if I set that there, it does the opposite. You see how the cursor is going in the opposite direction of where I'm going? And it's creating a mirror image. I see no purpose in that to do true retouching. I'm sure that somebody somewhere uses that, but I certainly do not. Down here, however, is a flip vertical, which I can see having some purpose. For example, if I click the top of the building and then come along this way, you can create a mirror image, perhaps like an ocean view or something like that. Now that I could see. I could see you using something like that. Push comes to shove. Lock frame is used for animation and video, so it's not something that you need to worry about, as well as these other functionality I don't use. But in this case, you could change the opacity of the cloning that you're doing, as well as if you're working on a layer, then what you're working on can be dark and light in difference. Since everything I do is working on layers and I manipulate the layer and not the tool, I wouldn't use any of this stuff. So when I do my actual cloning, I don't use this tool at all. It is completely irrelevant to me. This palette right there. How I actually do use this tool, however, is, let's say we do have a situation like this where we need to clone on the left or the right, or the top or the bottom. There's 100 different ways that you can use the retouching tool, use this cloning tool, but in its basic form, I'm going to show you this here, that I can, let's just say, grab that point on the top of the tower. When I come over here, you can see that it's creating a mirror, not a mirror, an exact copy of it within the brush. The larger I make the brush, the larger it's going to clone. And the smaller I make the brush, the smaller it's going to clone. Up top, you do have the options, once again, of darkens, multiplies, all that. You can change the opacity, which is something that I do use when I'm retouching somebody's face or other background things. Sometimes I do use the opacity. These other few icons here are for tablets, pressure sensitivity, which is another topic. And I will just briefly mention aligned, where if I click here and I come up and down, I let go of the mouse and I come over here, it just picks up right where it left off. That is aligned. If I unalign it, what happens is I click a point, I come over here and I do this and I lift it up. Notice that all I'm doing is creating duplicates of it, because it's always going back to where I set that point. That's another thing that I do not use. I always have it aligned. Sample is using layers. You can have, if you have a variety of layers, you can either sample from just that particular layer, or you can sample from all layers. Generally speaking, I use the current and below to clone everything that that exists underneath, because generally I'll make a single layer and everything that is below it gets cloned in its entirety. And this again is for tablet pressure control. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how I would extend this city, just very quickly, by holding down the key, Alt key on the Mac. Again, I'm not going to keep doing this, and an option on the keyboard. Click a point and you come over. If you have the setting currently on show overlay, you will see the what you are cloning. If you uncheck show overlay, you do not see it. Now this is a matter of personal preference, and it also depends on what I'm actually working on. This is a new feature, so when they did introduce it, I didn't care for it. I found it distracting. However, I've come to like it, only because it helps align things better. Where you're trying to match something up, you can get it just right. A lot of times I don't use it, and again, it's just a matter of preference. But okay, so I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to start duplicating the city. And as you can see, I was a little bit off. So I'll make my cursor a little bit bigger, and then just kind of fill in as best as I can. And essentially, I'm constantly grabbing different points. If you watch the key commands at the bottom of the screen, I'm constantly jumping around. And this is an example of why I would use the different opacity, because we can see a line going on here. So what I would do is I would change this opacity down to something lower, reset a point, and then kind of do point clicks and cause a blend, because in this case it's only a 25% opacity of what I'm grabbing over here, so it's blending them together. Okay, so that's a very quick way that I use the tool. So let's come back down here, click a point, and change that back to 100, and just finish up what I was doing over here. Now this is very quick tutorial, and if I was doing this on a real job, I would be all zoomed in and I would make sure I had everything aligned properly. But that is a whole other topic. So I'm just going to grab over here because this is just to show you how to use the tool as a general concept. As you learn to use the tool, you can check out other videos on the website, which will then give you more tutorials on how to advance your skills. Let's say, for example, we want to work on, give me just a second, I'm going to grab another image here. We're just going to pretend these actually go together. What I can do is I can set the point on one image, come back to the other, and I can essentially clone from this image into this image. Alright, now this is not a way that I would actually work. Big surprise. Because I would actually be bringing the entire layer over and then manipulating the layer itself as needed. I would not be cloning from one document to the other. However, it is something that can be done, which, by the way, I can show you. If I then create another layer on top of this, so the first layer is the background city that we were working on. The next layer is this image that I brought in, and the third layer is nothing, which I am going to work on. So if I go back to the clone stamp tool, I can, using this current and below, if I click there and I do this and I hide the below layers, you can see that I grabbed from both images. If, however, I use current layer, by using current layer, I have to click on the layer that I want, set the point. I can then go back to the other layer, which currently has nothing on it. I can then clone, but notice it only took from the current layer that I was on when I told it to begin cloning. So if I click on the background, I set a point and go back to the top one, it then grabs from the layer that I was on. And as a very quick down and dirty, this is how you use the clone stamp tool, as well as how not to use the clone stamp tool with all these different bells and whistles. The only reason I say don't use it is because they are advanced. It's advanced functionality, and it's not something that's used on true retouching of portraits. I know that, like all other tools, somebody uses it somewhere along the way, but most of this stuff, it's just more complicated and adds extra headache and hassle to someone who's trying to learn how to use the tool, to use these tools. So just to wrap this up, because my time is ending for this tutorial. If you found this useful and would like to learn more, you can go to www.theartofretouching.com, and there will be a follow-up tutorial on using the clone stamp tool in a much more advanced function, where we will be doing retouching on a model's face and body and background and everything else.